predictable results. And I think oftentimes as a leader, our first instinct is, well, that comes from just very predictable. If I run the same process on every deal, then I'm going to get predictable results. And that's actually not how the best teams work.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Rob Bellina, the founder of Differential Selling, and the work that I do here is based on the idea that today's best enterprise sellers share some core seller qualities that are leading indicators of success. Today is a conversation as part of a series on those seller qualities, and today we're talking about process mastery. My guest today is Dean Patton. Dean and I met at Cloudera several years ago, where I reported directly to him. Since then, he's held a variety of director and VP roles, but he's currently CRO at SetSale. Dean, say hi.
Hey, everybody. Hi, Rob. It's a privilege to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks so much. So Dean, just to get us started off, tell me a little bit about how you got into sales.
So I was an entrepreneur in college. I started a couple of companies and then sold my last one and went to work for a process manufacturing company, which is really overselling what it was. It was a small sign building company in Denton, Texas. And as part of that stuff, I got to work with clients and realized that selling was the part of the job. I was running the company at that point, realized that selling was the part of the business that I liked the most, and made an intentional choice to move into sales 30 years ago. Boy, I don't like to count those years. 30 years ago, and haven't stopped since. Falling in love with it.
I asked you to join this conversation to talk about this concept of process mastery, and the reason is because so much of what I know about it I learned from you. When I describe this process, when I'm working in my practice, it's both the ability of a salesperson to follow a prescribed process, but also be adaptable. I really have seen this sort of pattern in the best sellers, that they know how to guide their customers through a selling process. They know how to walk with their customers through the processes of both, right? The company that's doing the selling and the company that's doing the buying. Do you feel like that sort of like guidance process relationship, is that something that sellers have always done? You mentioned you've been doing it for sort of a long time, longer than I have. Is that always been a key factor, or is there something that's changing that's making that more important?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. I think it is becoming more important as sales becomes more of a team effort. Individual selling, you can alter and be kind of more adaptable on your own. As more parties get involved, a shared framework for communication, having the same vocabulary, understanding different responsibilities, like that becomes essential to actually deliver a great experience. So I think team selling is making process even more important than ever.
Is as someone who's not just sold but managed salespeople, how do you implement that kind of process to make that team selling a reality without constricting, the creativity of your sellers and the different approaches and styles?
Yeah, no, I think there's an essential idea here. I'll talk a little bit about how, but like first, I think there's a really important idea for anyone thinking about, creating or improving a sales team, and that is that creativity relies on structure. And you and I've talked about this quite a bit lately: the yin and yang of the craft of selling and the science of sales management and of selling, and within the customer communications, that's very much a creative process, right? It's a craft, but in order to be great at that, you do need some structure. And like, not to get so actually, I'm going to unapologetically get a little bit philosophical here, right? You think about our world, and right, there's no more than 100 varieties of like atoms and primary colors that make like a world of infinite beauty. And intrinsically, a blank slate is intimidating. So there's an inherently kind of thing. Sometimes people think like creativity is just freedom, and great creativity is like building from a structured process. So I think that's really true in selling, where as a leader, the more you can help pattern match what, and so so in terms of implementation, it depends on what stage you're in terms of developing your sales organization. And as you mentioned in my intro, like I've worked in very large organizations. Right now, I'm in a Series A, which is very much about like defining a repeatable process for a go-to-market fit. So it's about pattern matching, like what are the engagement steps? What kind of materials, what kind of structured evaluations should we be doing? What kind of materials should we be delivering to prove value? And the more you can define those and share them among the team, that's what gives your team the ability to kind of creatively respond and be their best. So, mastery of the process, that the confidence that comes with that is what allows us oftentimes to be to actually in the meeting think about the customer, not think about our process. Because we're thinking about, am I on script? Am I doing my process? We're in our world, not in the customer's world. So having that process in place and actually spending time practicing, role playing, becoming very comfortable with it is what actually lets the team, truly like think about the customer, ask the right question, be empathetic in the process, and then come back to their process as they need to.
Such an interesting thing that you said, that those constraints are required for creativity. This past weekend, I was playing Legos with my kids, and I've noticed that when we get out the giant Lego bucket that has like every Lego piece known to man in it, all of the creations kind of end up looking the same. But when we restrict for whatever reason, like somebody's using something or we can't find the big Lego bucket, and there's like these tight restrictions on what pieces they have, all of a sudden there's this explosion of difference, right? And diversity in their creations because they're constrained by what pieces they have. They have to come up with new ways to put the pieces together. I feel like that's something that's not commonly talked about, that those guardrails, those borders are something that's required to generate that kind of creativity. And you're saying you see that in the selling process.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it in some way it forces us deeper in our thinking. So what can happen, to be specific, like what can happen when we're talking about a sales engagement is, we can live in a world of what ifs and ideas, and what if we did that, and what if we did this, and the more that we're using kind of, well, I think this is for a long time, this has been the sales leader's role at different levels, right? To be the repository of what works and what doesn't, like very instinctually, like, hey, I know how to get us to this next step. I know what to do to respond to this objection. And this is one of the other trends in our world as we get more digital, as we get more kind of automated, is that sales leader who was an information pump. Hey, on this deal we did this, you can do that too. Now we can start to like accelerate that process and learn faster. And so it's that. So the creativity, you think about it as when you go to your one of the definitions I've always carried of a great sales leader is they always help your deal move forward. Like you go to them for ideas and they always kind of have an idea, right? Well, that's a creative process. That leader has a library in their mind of 1,000 different things you could do. So that creative process is relying on structure. It's relying on, hey, here at this step, and we all kind of develop, all reps and leaders that I've known kind of develop your own pseudo process that you follow of here's how I like to engage. So the more we share that as a team and follow a structure, like it helps us drill deeper into what is the solution here, and kind of worry more about the 5 whys of what moment we're in than all the different things that could possibly happen right now.
Yeah. So with too little process, too little structure, you're not going in any given direction, and actually stagnates the creativity. Can you fail the other direction? Have you seen folks be too restrictive, too rigid in following a prescriptive process? And what are some of the symptoms of that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have, and I think, you can squelch creativity. You can become very mechanical in your approach, and I think uh, treat each rep and each deal very much like a recipe. Like we have to do this, has to be very precise. We have to do this and then this and then this. And what to watch for when you see that is customers suddenly disengage. So you know the because what's happening is your sales team is more worried about their script than the customer. And the customer is growing frustrated with it, and then finally has no choice but to just disengage. Right. Whereas if you're really building trust and communicating and developing empathy and throughout that process, if they start to feel that way, like they'll share it with you. If they say, hey, this is not working, but if you're just selling to everybody according to this kind of strict process, some of them will stick with you, and some of them will just give up on you, because again, you're not adapting to that. So the idea here is that you've got some defined steps for your internal team to use to talk about where we are in the sale. The customer really doesn't care. Like the prospect really doesn't care about our steps. They're there to help us communicate as a team with them. So and if that's not coming through, right? If we care more about our process than using the fact that we're in evaluation, and that means we should be having a certain meeting right now, and then in that meeting we're being creative in our search for an idea. We're asking good questions that help guide that prospect to a better understanding of their own problem. If we're not doing that, if we're just pitching, if we're just doing kind of very self-serving adherence to process, then that's not a great experience. It's not a good buying experience. And I think that's what I've seen happen is people over rotate to the process being the solution. And it's not. The people are the solution. The people, sellers, leaders, SEs, customer success, everybody that would value consultants, in an enterprise sale, everybody that would bring to the sales engagement, they're the actual, they're the value. they're who's delivering the value. The process is just a way for us to organize who's there, how, measure it, right? To create ways to measure and manage. So I think that's the error on that side, is thinking that the process is the solution, and not just a way for your people to work better.
Yeah. In preparation for this conversation, I was thinking back a lot to when we first met and when I was reporting directly to you, and we had the benefit of kind of rebuilding. You were rebuilding that team, and putting a lot of those processes in place for the first time. And I just remember, I've worked for a lot of sales managers. I've worked for some that were very hands off, some that were that micromanaged, that were very, everybody has to do things the exact same way, has to look the exact same way. And the team that you built, that I was a part of at Cloudera, was very diverse in terms of experience and personality and style and approach. I mean, no two of us looked the same. And yet there was something about the way that you, I don't know, created, fostered the building of our team process and the implementation of it that somehow made it fit for all of us. And so that's a very long-winded way of me asking, like, so much of a process from like a management perspective is, hey, we've got a whole bunch of different people doing different things, and we need to get them predictable. We need to have predictable outcomes. So we need to get some sameness to what's happening. But what I saw you do was getting that sameness results, but with a very diverse group of people, and with a similar process that was applied sometimes in a bit of a different way. Can you just like kind of riff on that for a little bit? Because that always blew my mind, how you were able to implement that with the team.
to begin with, we were in a what I look back on as almost the ideal situation to take over as a sales leader because the expectations were so low. Um, so, and that's
Check the
really,
industry should probably stop right there.
yeah. That gave us time. That gave us actually a little more time than normal to build something that was adapted to us. So I think there is a key idea in there that you mentioned, actually I'll talk about. So predictable results, and I think oftentimes as a leader, our first instinct is, well, that comes from just very predictable, if I run the same process on every deal, then I'm going to get predictable results. And that's actually not how the best teams work. In a selling system, things will never go according to plan. Thinking that you can, do the same steps on every deal and everyone is going to close, all of it doesn't happen. So let's just start there. Like if you look at an individual deal, does any seller or leader think that there's some process that allows you to win every deal? No. We know that you're going to win some and lose some. So now we're talking about building a system of probabilities and of options so that in any given quarter, we can always cover our number. But that requires, so in our case, at Cloudera, right, it wasn't just there was a diversity of team members of and let me just share a little more with the audience about that. Like, it wasn't just, okay, difference of personality or style. We had different coverages. We had different reps covering different size accounts, different maturity of accounts. So, and then each quarter was different. If we recall, as we went into each quarter, and the other essential thing here is, you said, our process. That was our process. We came up with it. Like, I didn't impose it on the team. We worked through, hey, something's not working here. What will work? What is working? And then just expanded on that. It became our process. And then every quarter, we had a different mix of how we're going to cover our number. This quarter, we need to start some big, and we're always looking a quarter out too. We're looking, okay, we need to start some big bets because we have soft pipeline coverage in Q4. So in addition to executing on this quarter, we need to start some big bets so that we have pipeline for some large deals. But that's that's often this is the instinctive part of selling, like knowing, okay, based on where we are right now, we need to do some big deals or we need a bunch of new logos. But to do that, you have to have that inherent diversity. You have to have a team. We had a team that could run pretty much whatever play we called. Like we could decide, oh, we need to do 2 big deals and a bunch of new logos this quarter, and we could do it. And that's the optimal state. That's predictability. Predictability is having like talent in a bunch of different spots so you can adapt to how the market's changing.
Yeah, that was a special time for sure.
It was.
You alluded to the fact that like no two deals are different, especially when you get to the enterprise or strategic level. A lot of the work that I do is with folks that are transitioning from, maybe like a commercial type sale, or maybe they've been doing retail or B2C, transactional high velocity sales, and they're now moving into enterprise strategic selling. And things are much less scripted, much less predictable. Every sale looks different. Do you have recommendations or advice for someone that is trying to make that shift or that leap? Like what do you do to help foster that sort of adaptability in someone who maybe is pretty good at following a process because they come from that velocity type of selling, but they haven't really exercised the adaptability muscle?
First, acknowledge that is that's a growth process that is really ongoing. You and I are here in part because you and I are both remain obsessed with mastering enterprise selling. Everyone on this series is, Rob. Like, no one stopped learning. It's an unknowable thing, right? Like we're never going to actually know this. So because of that, I think there's a couple of books I would recommend, like Power-Based Selling, The Lost Art of Closing. So that's Holden and Ian Reno, to start to understand the difference, in particular that in a velocity sell, you're oftentimes selling a fairly discrete, well-described solution to a discrete, small problem. So because you think about, let's just take ad sales, right? Where the inputs, the elements, and like how you build the ROI, pretty simple, right? I'm going to advertise, I'm going to get leads from that, and if you will, the variables in the equation are simple. So your sales process is much simpler. And delivering a solution like CRM to a company, where you're going to have multiple stakeholders, a long deployment, you have multiple competitors. It's going to be a change management process that's involved in installation. It's going to require support and funding from executives. It's going to be maybe even reviewed by the board. Like that world of complexity that's involved in getting to the win that you seek is an order of magnitude higher. And there are steps all the way between that. It's kind of, the dramatic examples, but I think just understanding that as a seller, what you've got to start to do is think like an executive. And there's a reason. Like sometimes I think we'll call reps account executives or sales executives, and then just forget, like, that's just what's that for? Why do we do that? Like, why do we use that term? There's a difference in a rep and an executive. As an executive seller, they're essentially, the CEO of the problem.
Yeah.
Your job is to really understand in a deep way all the factors that are creating the problem, and then crafting a solution, and then being able to articulate that to multiple stakeholders. This is, high order kind of business intelligence and process. And so I think that's the first step, is making that transition, is that realizing how long that journey is going to be and how much you have to dedicate yourself to it. And it's not just about, making bigger checks and closing bigger deals. It's about becoming a mini CEO, honestly.
Yeah. That's so good.
Well, hey, do you remember, just on this real quick, you of course remember Tom Riley, and I think you've heard this story, but so for the audience, Tom Riley was the CEO of Cloudera, and Rob and I were there, and I got the chance to drive him from one customer to another in Houston one time, and I was really interested in his story, how he went from a rep. So we went from a sales rep to CEO, and he actually shared with me that many of the skills that he still uses as a CEO, he developed both as a seller and a frontline manager. So that frontline manager is a critical learning ground. So just more confirmation that this, this is, I think people's perception of sales sometimes, and there are certainly sales jobs that are relatively simple. What we do in enterprise sales is inherently, not only complex, but there's a lot at stake for these companies. So some of the other attributes that you have in your framework around trust building and storage, they're about responsibility, about taking responsibility for delivering a solution that actually solves the problem that's there. And that's I think that's done well. This is why I fall in love with what we do. Done well, it is tremendously rewarding. Like, we're changing companies, right? We're at the center of helping a company change the way they operate and improve. And like that's the motivation. That's part of it's also the motivation. Like many of the best, like yourself, people you've had on the podcast, the best reps I know actually are motivated by that, by being a good steward to like helping a company really change in the way they want to. So long answer to that. This is, I think, one of my favorite topics is like early in their career sellers who want to grow, like, and want to move into enterprise sales. I encourage them a lot. It's a tremendous, tremendous job, but it's a lot of responsibility, and you're going to be, you're going to be a lifelong learner if you're doing it right.
Yeah. Your description just now sounds a lot like my conversation with Zola. For those of you that have seen that, where she talks about belief and just that the joy and satisfaction that she gets doing the job that she does every day is really what makes this job special. And so I do want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about set sail for a second, because set sail is really interesting. It's in the little bit that you've been able to share with me, and that I've been able to see of it, this idea of applying science to identifying and incentivizing some of those behaviors and factors that align to a process. It does sort of align to this conversation of how prescriptive do we get on a process? How prescriptive can we get and still allow our reps to be creative? So tell us a little bit about set sail, and tell us about how you're kind of guiding that vision for the company in light of this conversation.
So if it's okay, I'm going to talk mostly about some of the ideas. I mean, I think my background is enough of an advertisement for set sail. So I don't want this to be a pitch, but there's definitely some concepts that drew me to the company. And specifically, again, that as our engagement with clients in the enterprise process is becoming more and more digital. So most things are in email, and a calendaring system and call recording, and they're like that. Sales engagement platforms is now that instinctive process I talked about earlier that a sales leader does in sharing what works about what other people are doing and helping guide reps and therefore customers through the process. Is now we can actually analytically and scientifically see the patterns and allow those to be kind of more visible for reps to see. So within set sail, we call these signals. There are certain key moments. So among that, all that engagement, what surfaces is there like key moments that we can act on. And whether you do it in set sail or something else, right? Just think about the leading steps, thinking about the leading indicators. So revenue is inherently a trailing metric. So by the time you're deciding whether or not, for instance, a rep is performing just based on revenue, you're driving with the rearview mirror. You've lost the opportunity to actually see leading indicators of whether they were accumulating the skill, becoming master of your sales process, to talk to them about it or replace them, or with deals if you're waiting just to retroactive win loss review. So it's this great opportunity to look at all of the steps that lead to the sale and talk about them in a shared vocabulary. Well, here's the signals that are happening. And then I said, then the other part of the other idea is that, from a behavioral science standpoint, there are some predictable things we can do to manage the irrational mind that kind of trick ourselves into doing things daily that we know we should do. And there's a lot of things, again, there's a lot of concepts there that you can apply. It's just about, and how you think about spiffs. So one of the things we do is take a very different approach to spiffs, to temporary incentives, and not in a way that interferes with primary compensation. And anytime you're, from a design standpoint, a successful sales organization, one of the most, maybe the most key ingredient is incentives. Like, are we aligning incentives to the right things? Because what people are paid on is how they operate. So adding to that, an incentive program that rewards focusing on smaller steps in the process is part of what we're striving to do. And I've gotten to talk to, as part of selling to a number of customers, doing product informational interviews. I've met some companies who are really interested in things around the same way, around like finding incremental steps that they can use to both measure progress and coach on it. Like, how do I coach better on that? How do I understand my pipeline based on not based on what reps are putting in Salesforce, but based on evidence of engagement with customers. That's changed. And I think this is something else we're going to see in our industry as sales tech grows, is moving from thinking about forecasting just based on, hey, what are reps saying? What are reps saying it's going to close? They're starting to look at the engagement with the customer see it change, use that as a predictive indicator. So, I mean, going back to process mastery, these are all tools. It's like tools you can use to help define, understand, and coach toward, further mastery of a repeatable process that works.
Cool stuff. Well, this is clearly a topic that we could spend some time on, and I'm greatly appreciative of you sharing a bit of your wisdom on it. Any other final thoughts or things that I should have asked you or wished you had put in there earlier?
But you have fantastic questions. As always, a lot of fun. One of the things that I was one of the things I was most proud of at Clever, not just that we achieved great results and built a team that really liked each other. Those were fun, but our customers really, I think, benefited from the work. So some of our best examples of success weren't just big deals that we did, but some kind of advancement for the customer. So I think that's the last thing here when you think about process mastery, is that really the purpose is to deliver a better buying experience. That's why all this work is worth it. Is you do it right, customers are more delighted, get more value. And just as a parting word, just for any sales leader, so like, don't forget the whole purpose of the job is the customer.
Good. All right. Well, with that, we'll bring it to a close. Dean, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
It's been a lot of fun. It's always great to talk these topics and to spend time with you. And thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Talk to you soon.
I'll take care. Bye.